This is part of our Responsible AI series, where we are trying to share how an organization can implement responsible AI from ground up. And as part of that, we looked at how to create your set of values. Based on that, your responsible AI strategy gets built. And today, in the second part, is where we will look at how to create your responsible AI strategy. And that's what it is about today. So let's get started. So this one we're going to skip for now. We have already just started the meeting. So in terms of what we are going to cover in today's session, so first of all is understanding this responsible AI blind spots. And this is like a very, very important concept to understand and keep in mind, which explains why we need responsible AI, and then how this tool called Value Canvas allows you to solve this blind spots or get rid of this blind spot in your organization or in your project. And the Value Canvas has three key pillars, which is people, process, and technology. So we will look at all of these pillars in detail, how to get the right answers for each of these pillars, and how to actually operationalize responsible AI with regards to all these three pillars. So we will go in depth into this one, and that will create this value canvas in today's session. After that, the phases of responsible AI adoption and building and executing an AI strategy for organization, good tech in action. Those three, if we have time, we'll cover today. Otherwise, we're going to shift these into the next session, which will run in March. I want to make sure that we cover whatever we cover is covered in enough detail so that you fully understand the concept and something you can implement within your project or your organization. So I will not try to rush there. And I think there is enough content in those first four topics. So probably we'll be covering that today. Most of you already know me. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Ultram AI, where we are building an enterprise SaaS platform for managing generative AI risks in production environments. I have been doing this for more than 20 years, building and delivering enterprise data and AI solutions. I'm married, happily married. I've got two boys, live in London, and I love cycling in my spare time. In terms of what we covered last time in part one, so we understood like what and why of responsible AI. Why do we need responsible AI? We looked at this analogy of understanding and learning about the use of hammer instead of just one use case, actually learning what are the various components and how to then you can use it for various purposes. And similarly, in today's session, we'll continue on that theme of understanding and creating a responsible AI strategy. We learned how to find and define your organization values, looked at the reality of ethics, and how to align responsible AI to your organization objectives, and why not to invest in responsible AI, actually, why to invest in responsible AI. And we covered this in part one, as I said. And if you were there and if you need a recap, or you were not there, you want to watch it, that recording is available on YouTube on Ultram AI channel on YouTube. We can share the link with everybody as well in the chat towards the end of the meeting. So you can again watch that in your own time, and we'll record this session and again make this available so that you can revisit it and sort of the concepts that you probably need to just make more notes on and understand and implement. So that always remains available for you over there. So let's get started in today's session. And one of the sort of key concepts I want you to understand is this techno value blind spots, and how using this value canvas that we will create helps us solve this techno value blind spots. Now, this one organization is building a recommendation system for HR professionals. So this is a tech company built a recommendation system for HR professionals. So you know that recommendation system, AI-based solution. And what it was doing was specific role in there. One of the recommendations was that it was recommending the set of interview panel, so members from within the organization, to form an interview panel based on who is being interviewed or what role is being interviewed. And it was job was to pick up the best interview panel. And another goal was that the interview panel should have diversity in it in terms of the experience and backgrounds and that sort of thing. So complete diversity at that interview panel. What happened was when the customers started using this solution, customers started finding that this system, recommendation system, was not only suggesting male interviewees, basically interviewers, not females. And when the feedback was received within the organization, the tech team, they looked at, okay, this is happening. So probably this is because of the training data. So there must be some bias in the training data, and hence the system, the recommendation system, is showing this bias towards males. So they decided to create some fairness metrics to measure this gender bias in the data inputs. But just measuring it did not help solve the problem, because the customers kept on noticing the same problem where the recommender system did not suggest even a single woman to sit in the panel, in the interview panel. So just looking at the problem, especially the ethical problem, the bias problem from technology perspective, and trying to solve it purely from technology does not solve it. There is always that blind spot. So this blind spot, the techno value blind spot, keeping an eye on that, we don't leave any blind spot. And the value canvas that we're going to build today helps us to make sure we don't have any blind spots, whether it is in terms of when you're creating a product, a solution, working on an AI project, or it is at organization level, which is implementing AI and making sure whatever you do with AI, whether you're using it or designing it, developing it, deploying it, it's done in a responsible way and there are no blind spots. So we'll use this tool called Value Canvas, and we'll create that today. So in order to understand this more, why ethics plays a big part in this solving this techno value blind spot is that the ethics is a tool for decision analysis. Basically, we look at this. It helps us look at the outcomes of AI systems, not just in terms of technology, but actually in terms of what was the intended purpose, and then apply that lens on top of it. And ethics predates technology. So ethics, the value system existed even before technology. Hence, it's important to not always try to look at everything from tech perspective and solve it through technology all the time. So make sure there is a very robust responsible AI strategy, which allows you to solve this techno value blind spot. Okay, so important point to remember that ethical values exist independently of our technology, and responsible AI strategy allows us to operationalize those values. Okay, how to create a responsible AI strategy. So we're going to follow this 4-step process. We're going to understand what are the 3 different layers of ethical problems. Then what are the sort of 3 pillars that we need to look into to solve these 3 layers of problems. And then we'll create our value canvas against all these pillars to enable responsible AI. And then we'll understand how to use this value canvas within your project, within your use case accordingly. So we're going to look at that. Now, before we go in there, one thing I want to focus on is this idea of responsible AI is not just a technical problem to be solved. So keeping that in mind, responsible AI is not just a technical problem to be solved. Now, what are the 3 key layers? As I said, in terms of ethical problems, you have to look at any ethical problem at these three separate layers. Let's take this example of recommendation system. So there was a technical solution built, which was showing gender bias, and that is the top layer. Then there were the people who built this technical solution, so data scientists, and they created it. So that's like another layer. And then there was the process that was followed in terms of building this solution, and also when they were trying to fix the issues, when they were found that there was gender bias, some process was followed in terms of creating a fairness metrics and all those things, and that was their workflow. And we know from our example that the system showed gender bias. The data scientists tried to create a solution, but that didn't solve the problem because inherently data scientists had this belief that data doesn't lie. So if when they checked their data, they were happy with it. They thought, okay, if the data says, only men are suitable for interviews, let's go with it kind of thing. So that sort of approach where there's lack of understanding of ethics and responsible AI within that team. And then also a lack of a process. So once they implemented a fairness metrics, how do you operationalize that as to like what needs to happen based on that fairness metrics in terms of the output is something they failed to implement. So there's those three layers you have to look at when you're trying to solve the problems, ethical problems with the AI system. So the tech layer, the people layer, and the process layer. So a robust, responsible AI strategy ensures that you're tackling not only the symptoms, which is, we were detecting this gender bias of an ethics problems, but you're also getting way down to the root causes, hence going deep down into that people layer and process layer as well. So it's not just about the final end result, the technology, but looking at the people and process as well, if you really want to have a robust, responsible AI strategy. So I hope you remember this three layers. And accordingly, to solve for these three key layers, we have these three key pillars in responsible AI strategy, and these are part of the value canvas as well. So people, process, technology. People, we are answering that key question, which is who is building your AI? So who is involved in anything to do with that AI that is being built? Whether it is the data scientists, whether it is the people working with the customers, getting feedback from them, business analysts, any roles that are involved in this project that is building that project around building this AI solution. The second pillar is the process pillar. How is the AI being built? What are your processes around when you're building this AI? How do you design it? How the development happening? All that components. Then there is the technology piece, which is what AI are you building? So those three questions we try to answer: people, process, technology, three key pillars, and understanding who is building your AI, how is the AI being built, and what AI are you building? So those three questions to answer. Now, how do we solve it? Is for people, we want to build the right skill sets and knowledge so then they are empowered to implement responsible AI. For the process layer and the process pillar, we build the mechanisms and the processes in place so that, again, they can build solutions which are comply with responsible AI. And also looking at technology, how do we build that actual AI and then enable responsible AI accordingly within that project is the technical solution. What's that technical layer? And we could break down all these three into their individual components and go through examples. How do we actually implement this? Okay, so let's start looking at how do we put this whole thing into practice where we solve for those three layers, and how do we build those three key pillars to solve problems in all these three layers using the value canvas. So if you see here, this is the value canvas template. And there are four key parts in this. One at the top is the value, what value you're working towards. and you're trying to implement that into people, process, and technology. And then within those people, process, and technology, those three key pillars, there are three elements under each as well. So people has educate, motivate, communicate. Process has intent, implement, instrument, and technology has data, document, and domain. Very comprehensive. If you see here, it's just one document, but the process that you follow, it's a thorough process. And we are going to look at it as to when we try to implement it, you can implement it at two levels. So the value canvas could be implemented at organization level or individual project level. Today's demo and example that we will do, we'll look at an example project. It's easier to understand. And then there are more nuances around organization level. How do you adapt responsible AI at organization level, which probably we'll cover in the third part of the series of webinars. So today we'll focus on solving this for at the project level. Okay. Now we learn the how to use the hammer, or learning the hammer actually in detail. So which is our value canvas, the tool we're going to use. And for that, I want you to imagine that you are a project manager at a fictional company. It's a Fortune 500 bank, and the name of the bank is AI Bank. For lack of much creativity there, I hope it helps to sort of explain that concept there. So project manager working at a Fortune 500 bank called AI Bank. Now, you have been assigned to lead a project which is developing an AI system to detect credit card frauds in real time. So credit card fraud detection in real time, you're building an AI system for that. And in terms of building that, the value that you want to work towards and implement is the value of fairness. So the value canvas that we looked at, you have to complete it at project level for one value at a time. So we're going to walk through this example of fairness. That's the value. So when we, in the first part, we learned to create our set of values. At that time, we learned that it could be more than one set of, values in them, maybe 7, 8, 10 values. For each value, you create and complete this value canvas. That's how the process works. And for this example today, we are looking at an example of the value of fairness. And in this company, the fairness is defined as equal quality of service for everybody. Fair. It's how the system could be fair, that everybody gets the same type of and same quality of service. So that's how they define fairness in this organization. So your role is to make sure that AI system that you're building for credit card fraud detection follows this value. So as I said, we're going to look at the three key pillars of the value canvas, starting with people first. So who is building your AI? And let's look closely at this people part of the value canvas. So you can see here three elements: educate, motivate, and communicate. What does each of these mean? Let's try and understand that, and also understand the importance of this people pillar. That why do we need this people pillar? So if you had just like looking at only the technology, and people don't understand how the value system works and how to build that into your processes and your solutions, then you will always have those techno value gaps. So solving this at people level is very, very important, actually, if you want to implement responsible AI within a project. So focusing on people first helps you to build everything for the rest of the two layers as well, which is the process layer and the technology layer. So you start with the people layer always. That's the first one. So the three elements of people layer is educate, motivate, and communicate. So educate is about training and upskilling the workforce. These are the people who are going to work on the project. You train and upskill them based on the knowledge gap from ethics perspective. So that, again, we'll look more into this. Next is motivates. How do you have put in some incentive structures, in place, positive peer support, so that they stay motivated to work on this and implement this. And then communicate. How do you enable this open communication around this ethics and responsible AI and how they are implementing this into their process and technology? So educate, motivate, and communicate. That's part of the people pillar. These are the three key elements. We're going to look at each one individually now. So the educate component. So the educate component, what does that mean? This question we are asking here is, if you see the key question is, do your people know how to use ethics? That's the question you're asking. Okay. Does the team know that how to use ethics when you're building a technical solution, AI solution that you're building? Okay, so what is the education solution? This is the effort that is something that is designed to upskill individuals, educate your team, and especially in the practical applications of ethics. So it could be through corporate training or other methods of training. The purpose of Educate Solution is to ensure that people have the required skill set and knowledge that is required to implement ethics into their solutions. Whether it is engaging into discussions, whether it is building the processes or the technology, all these three things. So they should have enough knowledge and skill set around ethics in that sense. How do we design the educate solution? So for this, there are three key questions to be answered. And you will see that it's kind of a similar system for all the elements, for all the pillars. So we'll have a set of questions that should be answered that give you an answer based on those three questions that you answer. So first key question to answer is, who needs ethics or value specific training? So who is like, if you're building this credit card fraud detections AI system, who is involved in that project and who out of those people need the training? What skills or knowledge is lacking? So once you know who is working, then you try to judge what's their skill and knowledge from ethics perspective and what's lacking. What is the best learning format for this for this information? So again, simple question to answer. So who needs the training? What training is required? How to provide the training? Those three questions. So in the end, you have this summary statement basically where you put in the who needs training in what, that will be delivered how. So those three things. So that's your educate solution. In terms of if you were to look at this from this, fraud detection, credit card fraud detection example, if you see here, focus here. So data scientists, let's say, we did the survey within the team who's working in it, and then we found that data scientists need training, but also full team, the rest of the team can also benefit from further education. So data scientists need more in-depth training, but rest of the team can also benefit from it. Then data scientists, what specific training? They need a refresher on new techniques in bias mitigation, because that's something you're trying to solve in there. Format could be because we are solving for fairness, so there should not be any bias. Formats could be a one-off workshop, and bank already requires all employees to have basic training on company value. So now these answers and this information will vary from organization to organization, size of the organization, size of the team, the challenge you're solving, and all these things. So the key questions that as I said, the key answer you're looking for is who needs the training, what training is required, and how to best provide the training, and have an answer for this question to solve for the people pillar and empower that. The second pillar, or the second element in the people pillar, is the motivate. So are the people motivated enough to implement this solution? So implement ethics and responsible AI. So this motivate solution is, how do we keep the people motivated? What is that solution that allows us to have a system to keep people motivated in this and keep on actively working at this? So the purpose is to cultivate this company culture where everybody actively participates in responsible AI practices and ethical decision making. So that's the purpose of motivate. It's self-explanatory in that sense. Now, in terms of designing a motivate solution, again, there is a simple set of questions you need to answer. Who needs to engage with responsible AI practices? That's the first question. Who what action or behavior do they need to engage with, specifically in terms of responsible AI practices? And how will you encourage them to engage with this action or behavior? So, who needs the engagement? What action or behavior do they need to take? And how will you encourage them? So, that's those three questions. You have this statement at the end: who needs to do what and will be motivated by how. So if you were to look at this as an example for motivating, for the specific example we are looking at, so data scientists, they will be responsible for monitoring for unwanted bias in the system, mitigating against bias. Business analysts and customer service representatives, and they have better insight into fairness for bank customers because they work with those, customer-facing roles. The full team, they need to conduct regular fairness checks. Not just the data scientists, the entire team. And then fairness should be a priority of success for the project. So how will you make sure that everybody is involved? Because if you make that as the priority for the success of the project, you will have metrics against it. So everybody has to stay on top of these things. So again, quite a simple set of questions. It's very systematic to do this, but it does take time. So whatever, we're doing this, imagine the complexity. Complexity is not in terms of this process. Complexity is because you have to work with all different types of people. And people come with their own ideas, own biases, own way of looking at things. To get everybody involved into building a responsible AI strategy, that's the key sort of challenge to be solved when you're doing this type of work. Now, the third element in people pillar is the communicate element. So communicate solution is basically how do we communicate within the organization, cross-organization communication around responsible AI practices. And the purpose is to sort of make sure there are no silos, communication silos within the organization, and there is more collaboration between various teams within the organization. So communication helps solve the problem of silos and fosters more collaboration within the team. In terms of designing the solution, again, there's a set of questions that you ask, the three questions. So who needs to be communicating about responsibility? So who should be communicating? What information they should be communicating or discussing and exchanging? And when and where should these discussions and conversations and communications take place? Three questions. So who needs to communicate? Again, the people part there, clarity on that. What information? And third, when and where. So you complete this and you get this action statement for the communicate parts. And again, let's look at our specific example. So all team members have important insights to bring to implementing fairness and need to communicate with it. So when we ask the question of who, then it's everybody. All the members have a part to play. They have their own experience around it. So customer facing roles, they will have their own insights into it, what customers are telling them, customers are saying, the customer feedback, their experience. And then obviously the tech team has their own insights into it because, like an example, building that fairness metrics and all these things. So they have that as well. Then what information needs to be? So information around that fairness and how it's being implemented and what's the feedback around it. All those things. So how can we communicate? Monthly hands-on meeting focused only on fairness. As I said, we're looking at the fairness value here. And then having some sort of internal communication channel, open channel, companies using Slack, Teams, and all these things, and newsletters to make sure that everybody stays up to date on these things. But it's very important to have full clarity on this. So based on those answers that we completed, we can see how to put this people pillar into action for our specific example. So for the educate part, data scientists need training in the latest bias mitigation techniques that will be delivered in a half-day workshop. Very actionable, very clear. How do you motivate data scientists, business analysts, and customer service representatives? They need to engage in consistent bias mitigation efforts and will be motivated by setting fairness metrics of success as critical OKRs for the overall project. So you tie in this implementation of fairness to the success of the project to keep everybody motivated, because everybody always want to succeed and make make success out of that project they are working on. In terms of communication part of things is data scientists, business analysts, and customer service representatives. They need to communicate about bias mitigation efforts and the impact on fairness metrics during an all hands meeting hosted every 3 weeks. Again, very clear, very actionable, who needs to be there, what they need, what is the topic we need to cover, and when and how we do that. So educate, motivate, communicate. That's the second part in there. The sort of putting everything into action there. So next is the process part. So we looked at people first. In people, we looked at educate, motivate, and communicate. Now we're going to look at the process part. How is the AI being built? That is the question. So this is about policies and frameworks. So let's get into this one. Again, let's have a quick look at the process part of the value canvas. Again, you can see there are three key elements: intent, implement, and instrument. Intent, implement, instrument, the three I's. So the process, this is the structural support for responsible AI. So imagine you have a very capable team which is ready to build the solution, and they have all the technical ethics solutions ready. But if they don't have the instructions on how to use those technical ethics solutions in action, then your solution will not reflect your foundational values. So what that means is having a clear process, set of instructions, which in terms of policies and frameworks that allows you to operationalize those values is very, very important. So the clear process around it is very important. So the three key elements of the process pillar is intent, implement, and instrument. What does that mean? Intent, uh, quite a very easy words to understand. It's similarly, but intent specific to what we are doing here. So setting intentions for embedding the foundational value into your AI through company policies. So have clear policies that allow you to embed those ethical values into your AI. So that's the intent, have clear intention for that. How do you implement? Then execution of ethical decision making and governance frameworks. So you operationalize through frameworks. Instrument, how best to equip your people with software and artifacts. So how do you implement these frameworks? What software is required for that? So intent, clear idea around having a good policy around it, that this is our intention around ethical AI. Then how do we implement it in terms of the governance frameworks? And then what software do we need in order to then deliver that framework and apply that throughout the process? So intent, implement, instrument. So again, we're going to walk through all three individually: intent, implement, and instrument. So what does this intent solution look like? This is the company policy, could be one, could be more than one, that is providing the strategic guidance for responsible AI and ethics practices. So intent is the policy part, having a clear policy for that. The purpose is to establish a clear and consistent strategic direction on how to manage ethical values in actions. So intent is where we are specifying your intent, your organization's intent, your, if it is a project level, your intent in the form of a policy. How do you design this solution? Again, three set of questions for intent. Who is in need of responsible AI guidelines? So who needs any guidelines? Having again, it's you see if you see that there's a common theme that this first question is around who, knowing the right people to address. What kind of business functions are in need of ethical strategic directions? So which roles, which functions are in need? What type of company policy would provide these guidelines and direction? So what sort of policy is required for it to provide those guidelines? So who needs the guidelines? What sort of guidelines are required? And what sort of company policy will provide these guidelines? And you answer this question, and you have a statement, powerful statement to allow you to implement this intent part. Now, intent in action. So this is again, the credit card fraud detection example. So again, you can see here. So the bank's current fairness policy only applies to credit card fraud, not AI systems and customer service. Okay. Fairness is defined as equal quality of service, as we learned earlier, but unclear what this means in credit card fraud detection. So that's the challenge there. Team needs clear guidance on fairness in AI, but also bank overall needs to update fairness policies to reflect AI uses. So if you think about it from those three questions, we understand that for this specific scenario, that fairness policy is there, but it only applies to credit card fraud, not rest of the AI systems, and that it's unclear what this sort of fairness means in specific to this example and this project, credit card fraud detection. And the team lacks where there is no clear guidance. So they lack that and they need a clear guidance on fairness in AI. So that's kind of thing, the intent part. So you need a policy to address this. The implement solution is the procedural framework that is designed to direct the execution of practices, responsible AI practices. So now we created the policy first. How do we implement that policy? So you need some sort of framework around that. So this is where you create that. And that's the purpose of this implement stage, where you create a comprehensive and standard course of action for execution of ethical values and practices. So who needs a framework? First question again is the who part. Who needs a framework to help execute on ethical values and responsible AI practices? What do they need the framework for? Having full clarity on that. Is it to guide critical thinking or direct specific actions, or both? At what point in AI life will this framework be used? Again, full clarity on that. And are you building a new framework, adapting an old framework, or customizing an open access framework? So what framework will be used? Full, again, there's research required in this in terms of what are the right frameworks already available. Do we just use it as is? Do we adapt it and make some changes to it? Or customize an open access framework in that sense. So with those questions answered, you can have this statement here: who needs a framework for what, to be used when? So again, this is how you design this implement solution. And let's see this in action for our specific example of credit card fraud detection. So we need a framework to guide specific steps for bias mitigation. Data scientists will need a framework for bias mitigation. Weekly review process on project progress and model performance as a natural point for checking. And in terms of the actual framework to be used, after research, they found that, okay, we can adapt a pre-existing fairness framework. We don't need to create something from ground up new for us. So again, all these questions answered, and you have a way to implement, sort of actually implement in action. The third is the instrument/tools. So these are the softwares and artifacts necessary for execution. So intent, what was the second one? Anybody remembers? Implement. And the third one is instrument. So 3 I's. So this is the software that you use to standardize implementation or responsible AI and ethical practices. So the purpose is to make sure there is standard execution. You want some automations in your process wherever required, and it has to be efficient as well. You don't have unlimited time to spend on this. So you want to have a good system that allows you to do that. So this is that part, instrument and tools part here. The guiding questions: who will use this software and what will they use it for? So once you know who needs to use it and what use they need to get out of it, you can decide on which tool will be required. So again, answering this question allows you to choose the right instrument, right tool. And in terms of looking at our specific example, so data scientists, they need a software to help monitor data sets for bias. And business analysts and customer service representatives need to be able to access and understand that software. So those three things: who will use the software and what will they use it for? Clear answer, and then you can build and create a solution or buy a solution for that accordingly. So in terms of our example, if we were to populate those answers in terms of intent, implement, and instrument for the process pillar, you can see, so data scientists, business analysts, and customer service representatives, they need a product quality policy for strategic guidance on fairness in customer-facing AI systems. Implement, so data scientists need a framework for bias mitigation and checks to be used during the team's weekly review process. And instrument, data scientists, business analysts, and again, customer service representatives, they need a software tool to create a data dashboard that will monitor fairness metrics. So again, three key elements of the process pillar: intent, implement, and instrument. And now we're left with the final pillar, which is the technology pillar. And by now you understand that it will have again three elements under this as well. This is the triple D, three Ds of technology. The key question we are trying to answer is, what are you building into your AI? So we look at data, we look at document, we look at domain. Let's dive into this and understand. So what is the role of technology pillar in responsible AI strategy? It's you can imagine it's like wings for your plane. You cannot fly the plane without having this strong tech pillar. So you need to ensure that all the key components that you need to succeed are in place before you can continue forward, before you start building. So the people part, the process part has to be done before we do the tech solution. And then you build the solution, not retrofitting afterwards. So that's very, very important. The three key elements: data, document, and domain. So data is where you add data ethics practices to your already existing data management processes. Document, so documentation of ethical decisions that you're making throughout the life cycle of your models. And the domain, this is the human oversight part now, where you have human oversight and feedback that is needed to refine. It's always an ongoing process. This whole responsible AI and implementing and the strategy, it's not a one-time activity. Although you do it once, but then you have feedback loops built into, because you might need to adapt your strategy based on what you are seeing at ground level once you have implemented it. So the three key pillars for technology pillar, the three key elements of technology pillar are data, document, and domain. So data is the data ethics practices. The document part is documentation of ethical decision making, and the domain part is the human oversight and feedback. Let's look at each one of these individually. So what is the data solution? So this is the technique or method that we for embedding ethical values into data. So we need to make sure that our data does not have any bias. So for our example, so what is the technique, what is the method you will use to make sure that that ethical value is embedded into your data? So the purpose is to make sure that those ethical values are built into your data solution. So that's the purpose of this. In terms of building this data solution, three key questions again. What ethical value do you need to embed into your data management practices? So fairness in this example, let's say. When in the data lifecycle does this ethical value need to be embedded? When do you embed it into this whole lifecycle? And what technique and method will you use to embed this value? Three questions. What ethical value, when in the lifecycle, and what technique and method to use? Sorry, I need to take a sip of water. So in terms of our specific credit card fraud detection example, so we need to embed fairness into the data. And the bias mitigation techniques will embed fairness. How will we do that? Then options include sampling during pre-processing and input correction during post-processing. So all this is how you will put the data into action in terms of the technology pillar. The document part, so this is documentation of ethical decision making. So all ethics related decisions should be documented for the entire life cycle of the AI project and AI model. And the purpose is so that you have full transparency around ethical decision making. You're not anybody, nobody's making random decisions. Any decision making that happens, there is full documentation, right? So you know always why something was done. And then if something needs to change, again, you can have take course of action accordingly. So this documentation helps resolve problems in the long run as well. So for transparency, you need to have full documentation of any ethics related decision making. Who is responsible for making ethical decisions? Again, that first question, the who part. What kind of ethical decisions need to be documented? And where are these decisions being documented? So, those three questions. Who is responsible for making the ethical decisions? What kind of ethical decisions need to be documented? And where are these decisions being documented? Once you answer these questions, you can solve for this having the document solution. And in terms of our example, so entire team is responsible for making fairness decisions. Business analysts assess whether or not the system is accurately detecting credit card fraud. Customer service representatives will have direct insights into the quality of service. And then the documentation needs to extend beyond data dashboard, perhaps to model cards as well. So in terms of what documentation to what detail, that sort of question there. Where will this be documented? Will it just be a data dashboard or something else? So that sort of question. Again, these are just example answers here. Has to be done at your project level, and these answers might look very different depending on your business use case. The last element of technology pillar is the human part, which is the domain part. So human oversight and feedback. Where within the AI lifecycle, within your product lifecycle, you have a specific time and place for sort of customer feedback and expert feedback. So that's the domain solution part, human in the loop. The purpose is to incrementally iterate and refine AI models into ethical value alignment through insights from people. So we build all the technology we're building is for people, isn't it? This technology is to serve the people, whether it is external customers, internal employees, anybody in that sense. It's always to serve the people. So make sure the domain allows us to take, we don't rely on AI to do this part. There should be a human in loop to make sure that system is serving that purpose and it aligns with the core values. The human element allows, it's like it keeps an additional check on the AI system that making sure that it aligns with the responsible AI strategy and the values. How do we design this? The domain part. So questions, do you need feedback from domain experts or customers or both? How often is the feedback being given? And when in the AI lifecycle is the feedback needed? Now, if you are still like you haven't built your application, then you're still developing, you can't have feedback from the end customers. So all these questions, like when in the life cycle is what feedback being collected from whom? That question needs to be answered. And again, you will have this one statement which gives you the solution and allows you to complete your canvas accordingly. So the domain in action part is, as I said, so direct feedback from customers after deployment, then credit card fraud specialists or experts during the design phase, they can look at various things in that. Then high frequency of feedback is better considering the sensitivity of the subject. So again, how often and when in the life cycle, it's high frequency because credit card fraud detection. So, false positives are bad, false negatives are also bad kind of thing. So making sure that everything is being checked in terms of that quality and fairness wise. You don't want somebody to be denied, a transaction to be denied or falsely labeled as a fraud as well. So that's not fair. So and also not fair if it is based on some sort of bias in the system. So that fairness has to be implemented. So in that sense, it's high frequency feedback is required at every stage of this life cycle of this product being developed and deployed and used. In terms of the answers for the data document domain for our specific example, so fairness will be embedded during the pre-processing of the algorithms in the data lifecycle using this technique called SWOT. You can Google it. I don't want to go into this at the moment. Again, it's mindful of the time as well. We have 5 more minutes to go. The document part is the where who needs the document and what they need to document, or for regarding what. So, data scientists need to document all of everything about fairness decisions on the project model cards. This is where they will document it. In terms of the domains, credit card fraud specialist feedback is needed at the start of every 3 week sprint during the design phase. So clear, very clear self-instruction there to implement. So we've gone through today, we looked at this idea of how you can have a responsible AI blind spot, even if you have created a very sophisticated technical solution, and how the value canvas is the tool that you can use to solve for this blind spot. There are 3 key pillars of this value canvas: value, process, and technology. So value answers the questions around who is driving your responsible AI success. Process is how is your AI being built responsibly, and technologies, what are you embedding into your AI? Each of these have 3 key elements, and you get the specific solution for each key element. And hence that's how you complete your value canvas. And basically, if you see, by completing this value canvas, let's just go back one slide. So if you can see, just this is the tech pillar. So by completing this value canvas, actually you are creating a strategy. So this is actual strategy you will be implementing. So this is how, by following this simple process of looking at the 3 key pillars and the 3 elements within each pillar and coming to this specific action against a specific value. So you create this value canvas for each value for that project. So you will have a very actionable, responsible AI strategy that you can implement, and for people, for process, and for technology. So that's kind of the recap what we did today. Quite a lot of things. As I said, we will upload the recording on YouTube, so you will have access to that and you can rewatch it. I hope this helps you when you are, whether you are a developer, whether you are a business analyst, whether you are a CTO, whether you are coming from a business leader position. Having a clear idea around responsible AI and responsible AI strategy can help you overcome all these challenges that a lot of companies are facing because they're trying to cut corners and they're not implementing it in the right way. It's quite a simple process to follow. Now, as I said, we have done this for a project level. Next part we want to look at is how do you adapt at the organization level, this responsible AI strategy. How do you create and implement it at the organization level? That's what we will look in the next part of this series of responsible AI strategy and ethics. So we'll understand what are the various phases of responsible AI adoption. How do you, it doesn't happen straight away in one go. What are the various phases? How does it get implemented? And then how do you build and execute this responsible AI strategy at organization level? And then bringing that strategy to life, which were like, what does good tech in action look like? So those 3 parts. So that will complete this series around ethics and responsible AI. And I hope you found today's session also valuable. And as I said, we will share the recording. I'm looking at quickly, I've got 1 minute. I'll look at the Q&A if anything is there. I don't see anything in there. Don't have much time as well. I hope you found value in this session, like the last one, and do share the next one when we publicize it so more people can benefit from it. We are creating these sessions just to genuinely provide value, and we feel there is a big gap in the market. There is so much push for AI innovation, AI development. Everybody wants to build something around AI, but people are skipping the steps, taking shortcuts, and then in the result is that companies could be fined, they can suffer reputational damage. And then think about the customer, customer having bad experience, customer suffering because of these applications. Very, very large enterprises have suffered because they didn't have responsible AI strategy built into their organization completely. Companies like Amazon, and this recommendation system actually genuinely happened with Amazon, where they built a system for screening the CVs, and somehow their system was always picking up males only, not females, because the training happened only on male specific data. So it was male predominant, and hence the results were always male predominant. So they had to completely shelve that project this after spending millions on it. So responsible AI strategy is so important and good to understand it. Even if you're not the one implementing it, having full understanding of it will help you do better in your role, whatever role you are doing. So thank you again for joining. Let's wrap up here and we will see you next time.